1919 was an auspicious year in history. The First World War ended, ushering a drastic change in the world order. The Philippine Islands had been a U.S. territory for 2 decades and was promised independence under the Jones Law of 1916. Progressive reformers saw the country and its people as a major target for modernization, and education was its main weapon. 7 forward-looking Filipinas came together in 1919 to create a school where young women could gain the knowledge and skills that would make them modern women. Paz Marquez Benitez was the first president of the Philippine Women's College. Jose Abad Santos was its first chairman of the Board of Trustees. Francisca Tirona Benitez was the second president, and with her husband Dean Conrado, guided the school from a house on A. Flores Street to its iconic Taft Avenue campus. In 1932, the college became a university, making PWU the first university for women in Asia founded by Asians. It provided a space where innovations in education flourished, and young people were encouraged to be the best that they could be. For over 100 years, the Philippine Women's University has been known as a leader in quality education. In 1934, PWU moved into its main campus on Taft Avenue, and since the 1970s has been co-educational. Located in the heart of Metro Manila, it is easily accessible by public transport and surrounded by affordable housing. Today's PWU offers undergraduate and graduate courses in several fields of study. Its business and management programs are responsive to the needs of industry, using evolving technology for global competence. PWU graduates excel in arts and sciences, education, social work, and diplomacy. Its fine arts and music programs have produced outstanding graduates through a holistic education that treasures heritage as well as excellence. PWU has pioneered in fields such as food science, nutrition and dietetics, medical technology, pharmacy, and nursing. PWU continues to play an essential role in producing graduates who possess the skills that make them competitive in the country and anywhere in the world.
We are a united community.
We may not be blood related,
but we Patriots are one big family.
Being part of the PWU community strengthens us.
Through the years, we support each other through good times and bad times.
We Patriots always have each other's back.
It's a big honor to be part of a community that is open to the ideas of each other.
Drives us to excel and be the best version of ourselves.
That's the standard of excellence that we Patriots strive for.
I'm thankful that this community lets us be who we want to be.
We thrive because we accept each other for who we are.
And like a family, we treat each other equally.
Actually, PWU gave us a home and helped us to be a patriot in society.
We may have different individual drums and instruments,
but we march to the same beat together as one united community.
Do you want to march with our community of patriots?
I am a patriot.
I am a patriot.
I am a patriot.
I am a patriot.
Food safe and quality morning to everyone. Welcome to the Philippine Women's University School of Food Science and Technology's two-day free webinar series entitled Food Safety and Quality, Way Forward to Economic Recovery. This two-day webinar series is very exciting as PWU School of Food Science and Technology graduate school students shall open doors for every Filipinos about the value of food safety and quality, not only in our daily living, but its indirect contribution to the recovery of our country. To start, my name is Benedict Paul Corpus, a graduate student of the Masters of Food Safety Management, and with me as my partner to moderate this morning session is Mr. Jean Anriel Henisa, an MSFS graduate student.
And to start our program, let us bow down our heads and feel the presence of our Lord through invocation, followed by the singing of Philippine National Anthem in Philippine Women's University.
Wonderful.
di mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, duyat ka ng magiting, sa manlulupig, di ka pasisiid, sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong bukaw, may dilagang tulad, awit sa paglayang minamahal, ang kisap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagdilingi, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may di magdidinig, lupa ng araw ng at ipagsitabay langit sa piling mo, aming ligaya dapat may mga abi ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
And now I will no longer prolong the agony of waiting. So at this juncture, to render us with his welcome remarks, may I call on the President of Philippine Women's University, Mr. Marco Alfredo M. Benitez. Sir?
To our distinguished guests, particularly from the Office of the Honorable Mayor Francis Zamora, the City Health Office led by Dr. Mitzi Tanchoco, and the officers and administrators of the various government offices of the City of San Juan, the members of the PW community led by our University Chancellor and SVPAA, Dr. Felina Young, our program chair for the School of Food Science and Technology, Dr. Maria Ligaya Braganza, our hardworking faculty, students, and guests watching on social media, good morning. I am honored to welcome all of you to this two-day online webinar entitled Food Safety and Quality, Way Forward to Economic Recovery. Congratulations to the organizers, our graduate students from the Master in Food Safety Management and Master of Science in Food Science programs for a well-planned, comprehensive, and timely webinar. We are no strangers to the tremendous effects the COVID-19 pandemic has had globally and in our country. In practically all sectors, health, livelihood, education, manufacturing, tourism, the retail industry, to name a few, the pandemic wreaked havoc on the lives of millions upon millions of Filipinos. We in the education sector were not spared, as nearly 900 private schools were forced to close or stop operations as a result of the lockdowns and community quarantines, many of whom closed their doors permanently. Like education, the food business industry is only this year coming back strong as the retail and trade sectors open up. People have begun dining in restaurants and frequenting malls, which for 2 years were immensely quiet. Thus, many businesses are taking full advantage of the return to the quote-unquote better normal to hasten their economic recovery and regain their losses from the pandemic. Because food, whether wholesale or retail, is one of the main commodities being purchased and consumed during this economic recovery, it is but natural that this is where the opportunities for economic growth is most lucrative. And for some unscrupulous players, an area where they can cut corners through food adulteration and fraud, and hasten their earnings at the expense of the health and wellness of the Filipino consumer. This two-day webinar aims to educate us on the laws that protect consumers from such actors, particularly the Food Safety Act of 2013 or Republic Act 10611, one of the landmark legislations enacted to strengthen the food safety regulatory system to protect consumer health and ensure access to local foods and food products. It also aims to further expand our knowledge of the innovations in the agribusiness sector, trends and technologies in food fortification, and current issues in Philippine food manufacturing, safety, and quality, which were heightened as a result of the pandemic. And maybe most importantly, it aims to educate us on ways to detect possible food adulteration and fraud through sensory evaluation and metabolomic sciences throughout this two-day session. I congratulate once again our organizers from the PW School of Food Science and Technology and thank them for continuing to draw our attention to the important issues and trends with regards to food safety and production. And I wish all of you a very informative event. Thank you very much and good morning.
Thank you, President Marco, for that very warm welcome for this webinar. I hope each and every one of us will participate and comprehend the technical talks we are about to hear.
Before we start our webinar, I would like to inform our dear participants regarding our house rules to follow during our webinar proper. For Zoom users, please properly identify yourselves by following the name format, the proper affiliation / your full name. For example, ABC Corporation / 1A De La Cruz. Also, make sure your audio is muted to avoid unnecessary noise. If you have questions or concerns, kindly write them down in the chat box. This will be answered by our speakers during the open forum sessions. Next, fill out the evaluation link later for the issuance of the certificate of participation. The webinar is also live streamed via Facebook and YouTube channels of the PWU. Thank you very much. Now, my partner will introduce to us our wonderful speakers for this morning session. Gian, take it away.
And now to introduce our speakers, our first talk will be composed of 3 speakers coming from the different field, and they will talk about the roles and responsibilities of FBO, FSCO, FSRA, and the LGU. So our first speaker is a graduate of BS Food Technology and has a master's degree in business administration. She has 25 years of experience in food industry in combined quality control, health, safety, and environment and regulatory affairs. Joining her is our second speaker, a graduate of Bachelor of Science in Industrial Technology, major in Food Service Management. She has 5 years of experience as a training officer and internal auditor in food manufacturing plant, and has a 3 years experience in DOST assigned food safety training to assist MSMEs. And also joining with them is our third speaker, a graduate of BS Fisheries, a licensed fisheries technologist, currently working as a fishing regulation officer of 2 at the ABAR. He has 7 years of experience as food safety auditor and fisheries and aquaculture business operator compliance to export and import fishery aquatic product. Let us welcome our first speakers for the first session, Ms. Geraldine Cordinete, Ms. Angelica Yamzon, Mr. Noor Aziz Giducos. Let's give them a virtual round of applause. Take it away, Ma'am and Sir.
Thank you, Gian and Benedict, for that kind introduction. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for attending our webinar. Our presentation is entitled, Know the Role and Responsibilities of Food Business Operators, Food Safety Compliance Officers, Food Safety Regulatory Agencies, and Local Government Units according to RA 10611 or the Food Safety Act of 2013. Please allow us to start first by sharing with you a video clip of a food safety incident that happened in July 21, 2022, where 1 victim died and several others hospitalized. I'm sorry, we're having some problems with our video, but in the video, this incident happened in July 21, 2022, where a mommy stand caused 1 person to die and several others to be hospitalized.
Maya-maya'y bumalik ang isa sa kanilang may buhat na bata. Habang inaasikaso ang bata, nagsuka ito. Nahilo na rin ang katabi niyang bata hanggang tuluyang nawala ng malay. Isa pang babae ang nahilo rin. Agad silang itinakbo sa ospital, kabilang ang 75 years old na si Levita.
Bali si nanay po kasi nahilo po, tapos biglang nag-violet na po yung kamay niya. Yun po.
Nagsuka na siya?
Nagsuka po.
Ang anak niyang si Josefina naiwan sa bahay. At nang kamustahin ng kapitbahay,
may nagmalasakit po na tumingin sa itaas nila. Nakita po si ate na bumubula na po yung bibig.
Tapos ano po nangyari sunod?
Ayun po, dinala na po si ate dito.
Pero huli na ang lahat para kay Josefina na binawian ng buhay.
Sobrang sakit po. Lalo na po si ate, PWD.
Ayon sa mga biktima, pare-pareho raw silang nakakain ng chicken mami na nabili sa kapitbahay.
Meron dyan medyo mild lang ang symptoms. Meron din dyan na medyo siguro nakakain ng mas marami. So medyo severe ang symptoms nila.
Ang nagbebenta ng chicken mami na ospital din dahil sa pagkahilo at pagsusuka.
Yun ang sinasabi ho nila, kumain lahat sila ho ng mami. At maging siya rin po, nandito po siya, nandun sa kabilang po siya, sa kabilang ward, sa ibang tumikim din po, tinikman din po niya.
Hindi raw nila alam kung bakit ganito ang nangyari sa kanilang mga customer.
Ayon sa kwento ng anak ko, wala naman po siyang ibang halo. Dahil almost 20 years na siyang nagtitinda po niyan. Walang kakaibang ginawa.
In the video just shown, the key players of a simple business are represented. The City of Manila as the regulator, the owner of the Mami Stand as the food business operator, and since this is a micro business, she is also her own food safety compliance officer. Let us see later what should have been their responsibilities to ensure that the Mami is safe for the consumers. Okay, the objective of this session is to inform our listeners of the roles and responsibilities of the key players in the food industry, the regulatory agencies, the local government units, the food business operators, and the food safety compliance officers according to the implementing rules and regulations of RA 10611 or the Food Safety Act of 2013. Republic Act 10611 was approved on August 23, 2013, and its IRR, jointly created by the Department of Health and the Department of Agriculture, was issued on February 20, 2015. The outline of this presentation starts with the roles and responsibilities of the food safety regulatory agencies and the local government units, which will be discussed by Mr. Nurgi Turcos. Afterwards, Ms. Layamson will present the roles and responsibilities of food business operators and food safety compliance officers. Following Ms. Layamson, I shall be presenting the requirement pertaining to HACCP, training, and prohibited acts and penalties. With that, Sir Noor will now be discussing the roles and responsibilities of FSRAs and LGUs. Take it away, Noor.
Thank you, Ma'am Geraldine. To our beloved professors, guest speakers, my co-facilitators, and participants from different sectors, ladies and gentlemen, magandang umaga po. Now I would like to begin my presentation with a question. And the question goes like this. Why do you think we need to know the roles and responsibility of our food safety regulatory agencies? Since I will be the one to discuss it a lot, allow me to answer the question. The government have a key roles in setting policies and providing legislation that lays down the minimum food safety or marketing standards that food businesses must meet and to ensure safe food for our public consumption. According to World Health Organization, food safety is everyone's responsibility. So we have the Department of Agriculture, Department of Health, and Department of Interior and Local Government. The first agency is the roles and responsibility of the Department of Agriculture. The Department of Agriculture is responsible for the food safety of primary productions and post-harvest stages of food supply chains, food that are locally produced or imported under this category. According to the Act, the DA shall prescribe the control measures, standards, and code of good agriculture practices, good animal husbandry practices, good aquaculture practices for the food safety, other codes of practices, and other requirements for the ensuring the safety of our primary and post-harvest foods. Going to our next slide, according to Section 16 of the Food Safety Act of the 2013, the DA and its attached agency shall be responsible for the development and enforcement of food safety standard in primary production and post-harvest stages of food supply chain. The following are the DA attached agencies and their delineated food safety mandate in primary and post-harvest food. So the first one is the Bureau of Animal and Industry for food derived from animals, including eggs and honey productions, the National Dairy Authority for milk production and post-harvest handling, the National Meat Inspection Service for meats, the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources for fresh fish and other seafoods, including those grown by aquaculture, the Bureau of Plant and Industry for plant foods. The next slide is the Fertilizer and Pest Authority for pesticides and fertilizer used in the production of plant and animal foods, the Philippine Coconut Authority for fresh coconut, the Sugar Regulatory Administration for sugarcane production and marketing, and then the Bureau of Agriculture and Fisheries Standard develop food safety standard for fresh plant and animal, fisheries, and aquaculture food. The National Food Authority for rice, corn, and other grains. And then the last one is the Food Development Center provides scientific support in testing, research, and training. Also, the following are the DA-attached agencies and their actual regulatory function for the food safety of our primary production and post-harvest stages of supply chain. The first one is the Bureau of Animal and Industry. Is responsible for the registration of accreditation of animal facilities such as poultry and broiler farms, piggery, and cow ranch. The Good Animal Husbandry Practices Certification Programs. There are some preferred function with other agencies such as issuance of export and import permits, cold storage and warehouse accreditation, and laboratory services according to their respective offices. Also, I will not mention those functions stated on the succeeding slide. The next one is the National Dairy Authority is responsible for the registration and licensing of dairy business operators, and then the product development services for milk. The next one is the National Meat Inspection Services. Next slide, please. The next one is the National Meat Inspection Services is responsible for the issuance of license to operate for meat establishment, such as meat cutting plants, poultry dressing plant, slaughterhouse, and meat distribution center. The GMP, SSOP, and GOP and HACCP certification for meat establishment, and then the meat transport certification program, transport meat for our transport meat carrier. The Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources is responsible for the GMP, SSOP, and HACCP certification for fishery establishment. This is one of the requirements for the export of fish and fishery aquatic product. The fishing boat and vessel accreditation for good handling practices, and then the aquaculture farm accreditation in standard with good aquaculture practices for fish ponds, hatchery, and grow out. The next one is the Bureau of Plant and Industry is responsible for the registration and good agriculture practices certification for our farmers and growers, and then issuance of license to operate to our packing facilities for fruits, vegetables. And then the next one is the Fertilizer and Pest Authority is responsible for the issuance of license to operate as fertilizer handler, dealer, and repacker, inspection of fertilizer manufacturing plant or repacking site. The next agency is the Philippine Coconut Authority is responsible for the registration business involving in coconut, palm oil, and coconut byproducts. And then the next one is the Sugar Regulatory Administration is responsible for the issuance of license to operate for our sugar, muscovado, molasses, and then the issuance of milling and refinery licenses for sugar. The next one is the National Food Authority is responsible for the registration business involving in rice and corn. And then the Food Development Center, which now under the Department of Agriculture, Office of the Secretary, is responsible for the food product testing and evaluation. The last one is the Bureau of Fisheries and Agricultural Standards is responsible for the development and distribution of Philippine national standards for agriculture and fisheries, risk profiling, and issuance of scientific and technical assistance. The second agency is the roles and responsibility of the Department of Health. According to the Act, the DOH shall ensure that all health laws, standards, policies, and programs assuring the safety of our processed and pre-packed foods, foods that are locally produced or imported under this category, and conduct of monitoring and epidemiological studies on foodborne illnesses. The next slides are the roles and responsibility of the food safety regulatory agencies under the DOH. The first one is the FDA. They have the bigger role in food safety of processed foods, monitors, evaluate, and ensure the compliance of manufacturer, evaluate distributors and retailers of process for food compliance to health rules and regulations, standard of quality. The following are their responsibilities as mandated by the Act. Is responsible for, can you revert the next slide, Ma'am LD? The previous one. Is responsible for the implementing, thank you, is responsible for the implementing a performance-based food safety control management system, develop of food standards and regulation, strong participation in Codex Alimentarius and other international standard setting bodies, and then communication of risk and development for interactive exchange among stakeholders, false marketing surveillance, and then the enforcement of HACCP and other risk-based control measures. The next slide is the establish of laboratories for food safety and strengthening the existing laboratory, develop of database for food safety hazard and foodborne illnesses from the epidemiological data, and then the strengthening of R&D capabilities and product safety and quality. The next one is the Bureau of Quarantine is responsible for the sanitation and food safety in both domestic and international ports and airports of entry. And then the next one is the National Epidemiology Center, Research Institute of Tropical Medicine, and the National Center for Disease Prevention and Control conduct and document epidemiological monitoring studies on foodborne illnesses. The National Center for Health Promotion advocates food safety awareness, information, and education to the public. And then the last one is the National Center for Disease Prevention and Control help ensure safety of food risk reduction in food contamination and foodborne diseases. The third agency is the roles and responsibility of the Department of Interior and Local Government. Under the Act, their principal responsibility is to supervise the enforcement of food safety and sanitary rules and regulation, inspection and compliance of businesses, establishment, and facilities with its own territorial jurisdiction. Under the DILG, which is the local government unit, is the assistance in the enforcement of Code of Sanitation of the Philippines, which is the PD 856. It is a food safety standards and regulation, which is the basis of the issuance of sanitary permit for business establishment. The following are the business establishment under the jurisdiction of the local government unit, enforcement of the food safety standard and regulation, as I mentioned earlier. The first one is the public, private markets, wet and dry, restaurants, fast food chain, food terminals, water refilling stations, catering establishments, hotels, canteens, supermarkets, and street food stall. Going to our next slides are the following shared responsibility of the food safety regulatory agencies, which is the DA, DOH, and DILG as mandated by the Act. The DILG, in collaboration with DA and DOH, enforcement of food safety and sanitary rules and regulation with its own territorial jurisdictions. The LGU, as is needed by the DOH and DA, to assist the implementation of food laws and other relevant regulation. The DA and the DOH shall capacitate the DILG and LGUs through the provision of the necessary technical assistance in the implementation of food safety and other functions under their jurisdiction. Also, shall periodically assess the effectiveness of these training programs in coordination with DILG. The DA and DOH, in cooperation with LGU, monitor the presence of contaminants in food to determine food safety hazard in food supply chain. In this last slide of my presentation is the creation of the Food Safety Regulation Coordinating Board. The composition is the DA and DOH and its attached agencies, the DILG, LGU, and DTI. This is mandated in the Article 6 of the Food Safety Act of 2013, and these are their powers and functions. Establish policies and procedures among agencies involved in food safety, monitor and coordinate the performance and implementation of mandates of the DA, the DOH, the DILG, and LGUs in food safety regulations. Identify the agency responsible for the enforcement of food laws. Coordinate crisis management and planning during food safety emergencies. And then the last one is to evaluate the effectiveness of the enforcement of food laws and training programs. Finally, that especially on the roles and responsibility of our government agencies, which the food businesses operators and food safety practitioners must follow, because those are the only manifestation that we are or they are responsible and should always think the safety of our consumers. Thank you so much for listening. I'll give the turn to my next presenter, Ms. Angelica Yamson. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Nur. Good morning, everyone. I am here to discuss the roles and responsibilities of the food business operators and the food safety compliance officers. We will first discuss the responsibilities of the food business operators. According to Republic Act 10611, or also known as Food Safety Act of 2013, FBO refers to a person engaged in food business, including one's agent, and is responsible for enabling that the requirements of this act are met by the food business under one's control. This may be private or public, whether for profit or not. Pag sinabi nating FBO, hindi lang po ito nagre-refer sa manufacturer. Nagre-refer din po ito pwede sa ating supplier, distributor, wholesaler, broker, agent, importer, exporter, retailer, and even caterer. As long as nagpo-provide ka ng food, you are referred as FBO. According to the Food Safety Act, under Section 13, food business operators shall ensure that the food satisfy the requirements of food law relevant to their activities in the food supply chain, and that control systems are in place to prevent, eliminate, or reduce risk to consumer. FBO is responsible for the prevention of adulteration, misbranding, fraudulent practices, misinformation, and other practices which mislead the consumer. I think most of us are familiar. This is a statement nagsasabing, ignorance of the law excuses no one. According to Article 3 of the Civil Code of the Philippines, this means that there is a conclusive presumption that everyone knows the law as long as there has been a publication. So as an FBO, we must always follow and should be updated on the releases, guidelines, and publications from our food safety regulatory agencies. We should always be proactive. Under the implementing rules and regulation of the Act, we have 6 rulings that must be followed. First, FBO shall be primarily responsible for ensuring of their food products and compliance of their production and distribution or trading system to the requirements of the Act. For example, in our operation, are we implementing GMP, pest control, waste management program, traceability, allergen control, and other measures as prescribed by the food safety regulatory agencies that prevent or minimize food safety hazards or reduce hazards to acceptable levels. Next, FBO shall ensure that the food they produce are prepared according to standards, codes of practice, and other control measures as prescribed by the food safety regulatory authorities. For example, are we complying with the national standard on potable water? Do you follow the right amount of food additives? Does our processed food pass the microbiological quality requirement? Third, farmers and fisher folks as well as the food business operators in the micro and small industry shall be assisted by the Department of Agriculture and Department of Health in coordination with the local government units to implement the standards and codes of practice. The government has regular and special program assisting micro and small entrepreneurs. Whenever they need assistance, they can communicate directly with our FSRA and ask for assistance. Branches of the government are also investing in food safety programs to further assist our SMEs. Fourth, food business operator in primary and production and post-harvest stages, process and prepackaged sector of the food supply chain shall be encouraged to implement a HACCP-based approach or an equivalent food safety control program in their operations. According to RA 10611, our HACCP refers to a science-based system which identifies, evaluates, and control hazards which are significant for food safety control points during the given stage in the food supply chain. So what can we do to control a specific hazard? For example, we want to control a microorganism, a pathogen. Let's say Staphylococcus aureus. What are the measures we need? Is sorting enough? Is washing enough? To control these specific microorganisms, we should meet the standard temperature not higher than 4 degrees Celsius for cold products and not lower than 60 degrees Celsius for hot products. We should always consider the time exposure to control the stuff. We need to cook the product to the right temperature with the right time exposure. This means that cooking is our critical control point to reduce the hazard to an acceptable level. Fifth, when required by markets, food business operators shall implement a HACCP-based system or an equivalent food safety control program in their operations. This refers to customer requirement. If the business has been implementing a higher level of certification, they can cater a wide range of customers nationally and internationally. Other than protecting consumer health, it is also a way to facilitate market access. The higher the certification, the higher the chance to acquire more customers and protect them from foodborne illnesses. Certification is also another way to assure that the products are tested and safe. And last, FBO operating within the jurisdiction of the Bureau of Quarantine of the Department of Health shall ensure that their products comply with good manufacturing practices and hazard provisions, and that their food handlers and stewards have valid BOQ health certificates. We will now discuss the specific responsibilities of the food business operators. These are stated under the implementing rules and regulations of the Act. First, food business operators shall be knowledgeable of the specific requirements of food law relevant to their activities in the food supply chain, and the procedures adopted by the relevant government agencies that implement the law. They shall adopt, apply, and be well informed of the codes and principles for good practices. Micro and small industry shall be assisted to facilitate their adoption of such practices. Upon the approval of this Act, food safety regulatory agencies have existing and also issued and revised guidelines to be followed by our food business operators. And some of these are the following. Our first example is the Administrative Order 2014-0029, or the Rules and Regulations on Licensing and Registration of Processed Food and Other Food Products and for Other Purposes. This was stated under Article 8, Implementation of Food Safety Regulations. This was under Section 28, Licensing, Registration of Establishment. It states that appropriate authorization shall be developed and issued in a form of a permit, license, and certificate of registration or compliance. Our next example is the Administrative Order 2014-030, or the Revised Rules and Regulations governing the labeling of prepackaged foods. This states the 11 mandatory labeling requirements, and other than this also states the other and additional requirements stated on the guideline. This is depending on the product you are producing. Next, if a food business operator consider or has a reason to believe that the food it produced, processed, distributed, or imported is not safe or not in compliance with food safety requirements, it shall immediately initiate procedures to withdraw the food in the question from the market and inform the regulatory authority. This stressed the importance of the recall program and the risk management plan developed by the food business operator. The program was not only a requirement for this Act, but also a tool that will help the business for such incidents. FBO shall also allow their businesses and collaborate with the regulatory authorities. They shall allow the food safety regulatory agencies to inspect their business to avoid the risk posed by the food products which they have supplied. If we did not allow the FSRA to conduct an inspection, this means we violated the Act. Inspections are done to verify compliance with mandatory food standards like GMP, HACCP, and other requirements. This was stated under Article 12, Section 37, Prohibited Acts, Ruling C. And our last specific requirements, and where the unsafe or non-compliant food product may have reached the consumer, the operator shall effectively and accurately inform the consumer of the reason for the withdrawal, and if necessary, recall the same from the market. This is also part of the recall program. The FBO must have their master list to easily communicate with the consumers. They should also communicate with the regulatory authorities and publish advisories and communicate with the affected areas to easily contain the affected items. Our colleague will later discuss the traceability in the processed food supply chain. This may help our food business operators to further improve their recall program. Food safety compliance officers. All of the food businesses shall designate a food safety compliance officers who has passed a prescribed training course for FSCO recognized by the Department of Agriculture and or the Department of Health. The Department of Agriculture and the Department of Health shall develop and conduct food safety training designed specifically for FSCO, FBO, and FSRA. When designating our food safety compliance officers for our micro and small enterprises, the owner may serve as the FSCO or a consultant FSCO may be employed part-time or full-time basis. For our large and medium-scale food businesses engaged in the production of primary and post-harvest sector of the food supply chain, they shall designate an FSCO who is preferably a graduate of food-related courses. The specific course were mentioned in the IRR or the implementing rules and regulations. We are encouraging everyone to further read and study this. Paano naman kung di ka graduate ng food safety related course? Can you be designated as an FSCO? Yes, as long as you have work experience related to food safety and pass the training, you may be designated as an FSCO. The FSCO shall oversee the implementation of the food safety programs and activities of the food businesses consistent with the provision of the IRR. FSCO is responsible for the advancement of food safety in its operation. He or she shall work together with the team to consistently plan, implement, verify, and improve the system related to food safety. The Department of Agriculture released a department order last January 2022. It is about the delineation of function of the DA food safety related training. If we further read this order, we will know that the FSRA, like NMIS, BIFAR, and SRA, and the FDC are the agencies that are responsible for training the FSCO and FPO. The DOH and the DA are continually developing guidelines for food safety-related training for FBO and FSCO. If you want to ask specific guides, we can call to their official telephone numbers or we can email them to their official website. We're also encouraging everyone to follow their social media platforms to be updated on the news related to the implementation of the Act. And as a continuation of our discussion related to the Food Safety Act of 2013, I will now call on our colleague, Ma'am Geraldine Cordinete, to further discuss the roles and responsibilities of the FSRA, LGUs, FBO, and FSCO. Over to you, Ma'am G.
Thank you, Lai, for that informative session. Let us now take a look at what are the requirements of the Act pertaining to HACCP. The IRR mentioned HACCP multiple times in the following sections. Section 7 mentions encouraging FBOs to implement HACCP, and parts of Section 13 mentions FBOs implementing HACCP if required by markets, and the Bureau of Quarantine ensuring FBOs complying with GMP or HACCP. Sections 18 and 29 mentions the FDA and BOQ enforcing the use of HACCP and other risk-based controls, as well as inspection of FBOs for compliance. The IRR in Section 7 uses the term encouragement, while the rest of the section uses the word enforcement. This seemingly contradicting use of terms may be cleared when the implementing agencies, the DA and the DOH, release their industry guidance. Until then, the purpose of this webinar is to inform the participants of the content of the IRR. The last section that mentions HACCP provides for a requirement for both business operators to ensure that their personnel is trained on HACCP. All in all, HACCP was mentioned 11 times, including the definition given in Section 4. It will be prudent on our part to start programs geared towards developing and implementing HACCP, so that when the requirement becomes mandatory, we do not have to rush completion of a hazard control program. Now, what is the Act saying when it comes to training? Article 9, Sections 31 to 33 specify the requirements on training and consumer education. FBOs are required to be trained and understand the requirements of food safety regulations, while their personnel shall be trained on HACCP, on codes of good practice, and technologies to comply with the regulations. In addition, their designated food safety compliance officer shall pass a prescribed training course for FSCO recognized by the DA and the DOH. Also, the FBOs, food handlers shall have mandatory training on safe food handling. Furthermore, it is not only the food business operators and their employees who are required to be trained. The implementing agencies of the Act shall also be trained on the scientific basis for the provisions of the law and on the conduct of official controls. Apart from the training requirements of FBOs and their employees and capacity building for the implementing agencies, the Act also provides for consumer education program to be developed by the implementing agencies in partnership with the Department of Education. For this program, DepEd will be the assigned implementer. More importantly, it will be the government who shall fund the training and consumer education programs. Implementing agencies shall identify training needs and develop training programs. All training programs shall include the requirement of the Food Safety Act as stated in Rule 31.1. Now, apart from the FSRAs, who else can conduct the training? Other government institutions, the academe, professional associations, third-party service providers may also conduct training alone or partner with DA and the DOH, provided that these are recognized by the FSRAs. Accredited training providers can also develop and implement the training programs. And now for the update, our team sent an inquiry to FDA Center for Food Regulation and Research inquiring whether 1, there are already guidelines for accreditation of training institutions, and 2, if a designated FSCO is already a requirement for acquiring authorization. The FDA has responded and confirmed that they are already working on the guidelines for accreditation of training institutions. Hence, however, an FSCO certificate is not yet a requirement for the issuance of FDA authorizations. But kahit wala pa po silang guidelines, they also emphasize that the absence of a guideline and prescribed training course should not prevent FBOs from designating their FSCO, which is already mandatory as per Section 14 of RA 10611. In addition, the Philippine Trade and Training Center, our MSME Academy, is already developing modules for FSCO training. The Department of Agriculture, on the latest information, is also developing their guidelines. Pending issuance of the official guidelines, we can ready ourselves by availing of trainings offered by government institutions such as the Philippine Trade and Training Center. They have offerings on training on food safety and quality. The Department of Food Science and Technology. Their different offices have their own Facebook pages where they announce free online trainings. The Food and Drug Administration also provides training through their FDA Academy. Visit their official website or their Facebook page to be informed of their upcoming trainings. These are just some of the trainings available for free or with minimal fee offered by our government. Like I said, there are no official issuances regarding the status of the training programs from the DA and the DOH, but we can already take advantage of trainings available and be ready when training requirements become mandatory. Now, alam na natin what we need to fulfill our roles and embrace our responsibilities. Ano naman ang hindi natin dapat gawin? Well, our next slides shall present what is prohibited and penalties thereof according to RA 10611. Ano yung mga prohibitions, no? It is prohibited to operate business without authorization. Sir Noor has discussed earlier, the government agencies that grants permits and licenses for FBOs is specific to the kind of business and product they offer for manufacture, sales, or distribution. Products not conforming to Philippine standards and those declared banned is also prohibited from manufacture, sale, and distribution. Our FDA in their website publish products that has certificate of product registration that has no certificate of product registration every now and then. And these are example of products with no authorization. Now, what is the other prohibitions? It is also prohibited to adulterate, misbrand, mislabel, falsely advertise, and carry out acts contrary to GMP. Misbranding is deliberate labeling or advertising of food that is misleading. At they have certain claims that cannot be supported by a reliable source, a certifying body, or by scientific evidence. Mislabeling is not defined in RA 10611, but we can look to the Consumer Act of the Philippines in Article 85 that cites condition of food when such can be deemed mislabeled, and AO 2014-0030, FDA's labeling regulations on prepackaged food in Part 7, misleading declaration, representation, and prohibited claims. False advertising is again not defined in RA 10611, but we can look again at RA 7394, the Consumer Act of the Philippines in Section 110, where false advertising is defined. Now, in the case of adulteration, it is lengthily defined by RA 10611. Next slide, please, Ms. LD. Now, let us see what can be considered unadulterated food according to RA 10611. First, products that contain poisonous or deleterious substances. Products that contain substances that exceeds legal limits. Those that contain putrid, filthy, and decomposed products. Or those that are prepared unsanitarily. Or yung mga gawa sa namatay or may sakit na hayop. Or irradiated unlawfully. Irradiated food has to follow DOH 8015T Series 2004 prescribing regulations for irradiated food. Or those products with intentional adulteration resulting in food fraud. This will be discussed lengthily by my colleagues, AJ Bismano and Ms. Eileen Claire Francisco in another session this afternoon. So stay tuned for that. Also, adulterated are those products manufactured violating good manufacturing regulations. Lastly, products that use expired ingredients is also considered adulterated. Other prohibited acts include refusal to grant entry and or access to pertinent records to FSRA inspectors, and failure to comply with recall orders, conniving with FBOs or food inspectors that resulted in unsafe food, and lastly, of course, acts violating the IRR of the Food Safety Act. Now, alam na natin what should we do and should not do. What can happen if we are caught not complying? Penalties that can be imposed are fines that range from 50,000 to 500,000. Suspension or revocation of permits, and ito na po, meron na pong imprisonment up to 6 years and 1 day. And in the case that the perpetrator is an alien or naturalized citizen, deportation and permanent ban from entering the Philippines. Lai and Noor, balikan natin yung video that we played at the start of the presentation. Ms. Lai and Sir Noor, what do you think could have prevented that unfortunate incident?
Ma'am G, yung mga FBO kasi natin expected po talaga yan to be regulated by our LGUs and regulatory agencies. Sa pangkalahatan, kung babalikan natin yung principal responsibility under Section 40 ng Food Safety Act, FBO should ensure that the food sold complies with the requirements. Ito ay sa lahat ng part ng food chain. Kailangan meron tayong control system for hazards to reduce or eliminate po yung risk to consumers. Kailangan din maging mapanuri yung mga mamimili natin. Di ba po, Sir Nur?
Yes, Ma'am Lai. Yes, I agree, Ms. Lai. If the roles and responsibility of key players were complied, incidents like this could have been avoided. Kaya napakahalaga na kailangan nating sundin ang alintuntunin ng batas na pinapatupad ng ating mahal na gobyerno para sa ligtas na pagkain nating lahat. Di ba po, Ma'am G?
Yes, Noor. The fatal mommy incident could have been avoided if the requirements of the Food Safety Act are being implemented to the fullest. And the key players know and embrace their roles and responsibilities. The government, through the creation of regulations and standards and its enforcement, the food business operators by obeying the law and implementing what is needed to make our food safe, the food safety practitioners by sharing knowledge on how best to comply with food safety requirements, but keeping in mind the viability of the businesses. The consumer by keeping oneself informed to be able to demand safe food from the government and the right to safe and nutritious food. With that, we will now be playing a little game to check if our participants were paying attention to our session. Moderators, can you kindly check our Facebook page and YouTube streams so we can see the answers of our listeners? Lai?
Yes, Ma'am G, we will be giving our first two listeners who can answer our question correctly tag 100 pesos worth of load po siya via GCash. Please type in your answer po in our comment section. We look further for your details based on our registration. Okay, ready? The question goes, please cite two examples of unadulterated food based on the definition given by the Food Safety Act of 2013. Okay, I repeat. Please cite two examples of unadulterated food based on the definition given by the Food Safety Act of 2013.
Sir Gian and Sir Benedict, do we have our winners already?
None so far for Facebook attendees.
Yes, meron na po tayong winner coming from our YouTube live. So we will receive a prize and contact na lang po natin siya for may distribute ang kanya pong prize sa ating question po na ito.
That is very good, Sir Gian, Sir Benedict. Mukhang nakinig talaga sila kanina. Now, it's our turn to ask our listeners questions. I'm sorry, it's our listeners' turn to ask us questions. Sir Noor and Sir Gian, do we have some questions from our listeners?
As for the questions, we have questions from our registrants. First question is how to be as food safety officer. Any specifics about the food safety officership?
Well, under Section 14 of the Republic Act of 10611, the Food Safety Compliance Officer has to be designated by the food business operator. And if you are a micro and a small company, the owner can be their own food safety compliance officer. As I gave you the update earlier, wala pang guidelines ang DA and DOH regarding the prescribed training courses for food safety compliance officer. But the FDA reiterated that this does not preclude us from designating our FSCO. So as I said, let's take advantage of the free trainings offered by our government agencies, which I think will be similar to actual courses required for our FSCO. I hope I gave you a satisfactory answer, Sir Benedict.
Right, thank you, Ma'am G. There is another question stating, what is the law regarding selling contaminated food?
Allow me to answer that, Sir Benedict. According to the Republic Act of 10611 IRR, it is stated in Section 14A.4, the FBO shall ensure that such food is not adulterated, contaminated, misbranded, and misleading. It is also stated in the RA 7394 Consumer Act of the Philippines, Article 2, Declaration of Policy, Protections Against Hazard to Health and Safety, protections against deceptive, unfair, and unconscionable sales, acts, and practices. So that's my answer, Sir Benedict. I hope it has a satisfactory answer. There are two laws in the applied if you selling contaminated food. Thank you, Sir Benedict.
All right. Thank you, Sir Noor. Before I ask the third question that was given to us, may I remind everyone to please register for this seminar or this webinar, because especially those who have answered the question a while ago, you will be contacted by our colleagues. So just register, please, and they will talk to you later. Now, for the third question, what will happen when the consumer itself do not report any defective products directly, but instead they post it on social media? Can anyone from the speakers answer this question?
Hi, Sir Benedict. I'll try to answer that po. When having a complaint, it is recommendable po siguro to directly report the incident directly to the company to solve the problem. And kung sakaling hindi po nag-reply sa atin yung company, pwede siguro tayong mag-direct po dun sa DTI. Meron po kasi tayong tinatawag na Consumer Act. Tapos pwede po tayong makikontak doon. Meron silang email address and may contact numbers. Pwede po natin siya i-report doon para ma-address po yung gusto natin ma-address. I hope nakatulong po yun. Thank you.
Right. So with that, I would like to thank our speakers, Ma'am Lai, Ma'am G, and Sir Noor, for those timely information about the Food Safety Act and what our government is currently doing. And as we all know, the Philippine economy is recovering, and as what our president said a while ago in his speech, there is an emergence of new businesses, food businesses. And those information given to us today by our speakers are very vital. To summarize, our first speaker, Ma'am G, had highlighted the salient points of the Food Safety Act of 2013, and she had discussed the importance of HACCP implementation among food business operators, also the big role of the Department of Education in conducting awareness about food safety amongst our youths, and the implication or penalties that correspond to not following the Food Safety Act. While Sir Noor had discussed the roles and responsibilities of the food safety regulatory authorities and the LGUs. Our FSRAs, our food safety regulatory authorities, which are DOH and Department of Agriculture, has these bureaus concerning and plays an important industry's implementation of Food Safety Act. And our last speaker, Ms. Lai, had pointed out the roles and responsibilities of the food business operators, particularly the food safety officers. With this information laid to us this morning, we should realize that the FBOs, the food safety regulatory authorities, the local government units, and even as consumers, please take note of this, that we have a shared responsibility in implementing this law. Hindi po ito para lang sa gobyerno natin, but we as consumers have to act on this. As we all know, Food Safety Act of 2013 had this IRR in 2015. How many years? Our speaker had given us a very good updates regarding to this act. That knowledge we will use as we recover our economy. Sir Gian, what is your takeaways?
Okay, thank you, Sir Benedict. So as per my takeaways for Sir Noor, I am able to know that each agencies have shared obligations on protecting our consumer health and facilitating market access of local food and food products. And for Ma'am Lai, I am able to understand that food business operators must be knowledgeable with the food law, which made me realize the phrase, Ignorance of the law excuses no one must be applied at all times. And since the safety of our consumer lie on their hand, they must take it seriously in compliance to our law. In addition, I am also able to know that FSCO must be qualified enough in order to do his or her specific role. And for Ma'am Geraldine, I am able to understand the important points of Food Safety Act of 2013. She highlighted its important section and let us understand that the act will aid in the development of quality and safe products. In addition, I also grasp the importance of HACCP in compliance to our food safety standards.
So Gian, can you check how many YouTube viewers, Facebook viewers, and Zoom participants do we have right now?
Sir, as per count, we have 170 Facebook viewers and 70 YouTube Live viewers.
Oh. All right. So, please, I am reminding everyone to fill up the evaluation forms that will be sent to your chat boxes from Facebook and YouTube Live. And take note that only participants who have successfully accomplished these evaluation forms will be given certificates after the end of our session. Please be reminded that you have until 1:30 in the afternoon to accomplish these forms. Right? Sir Gian?
Okay, thank you, our dear speakers, and to our listeners for gracing their questions for our speakers in this event. So we would like to also give thanks to PWU management, the School of Food Science and Technology, and those who registered and actively participating audiences. And now to continue this timely and informative two-day free webinar series by the PWU entitled Food Safety and Quality Way Forward to Economic Recovery, let me introduce you our second speaker this morning. So in the event of or batch becomes contaminated, a mask for tracking down of our product is primarily important. With this, there is a system that could be used to determine where there is contamination took place. And the topic of our next speaker will focus on traceability in processed food supply chain. So without further ado, allow me to introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is a graduate of Bachelor of Science in Hotel and Restaurant Management. She is an owner and founder of One Click Management Consultancy Services and currently works as a food safety compliance officer for food manufacturing, food trading, and food distributing companies. Likewise, she formerly works also as a food safety compliance officer of Daesung Philippines Corporation, Waynesburg International Corporation, and Euroswiss Food Incorporated. Let us welcome our next speaker, Ms. Nelped B. Kim. Let us give her a warm round of applause.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome participants and other professionals. Thank you, Sir Jean, for your kind and wonderful introduction. Before we start, I would like to know who among you are familiar. Sorry guys, there is a technicality. So, okay. Sir Jean, thank you for your kind and wonderful introduction. Before we start, I would like to know who among you are familiar with the Pancit Canton scandal. I see a lot relevant to that. Did you know that the topic I'll be discussing is an important and powerful tool to control food hazards, such as microbial and chemical contamination, prevent food allergies and food fraud, prevent ineffective product recalls, which are major food safety concerns that the global region is currently battling nowadays. The topic I'll be discussing with you is entitled Traceability in the Processed Food Supply Chain. Before we proceed, I would like to share with you the scope of our presentation. First scoop is the definition. And then next is the importance of our traceability. And next is the traceability at the food supply chain. And then next is the mechanism to support traceability. And we have here the issues and challenges and our solution for these issues and challenges and some recommended featured publication. Who among you here are familiar with traceability? Do you think traceability is essential? Is traceability essential for you? Before we answer it, let us first familiarize ourselves on what is traceability. Did you know that the word traceability came from trace plus ability? Analyzing it, traceable plus ET or IT is one of the trending issues and topic discussion among the experts, not only from the Philippines, but globally. Traceability is a big question to others, especially to those who are involved in the processing or in the food supply chain. There are some that do not know the importance of traceability, or they know but are not yet well knowledgeable. Traceability has been enacted, constitutional, and legalized. We have here the definition of traceability. First definition came from our Philippines Republic Act number 10611, section 27, to follow the movement of the food through specified stages. And from Codex Alimentarius is to control hazards. And from ISO, or the ISO stands for International Organization for Standardization, is to ability to trace the history. And next we have here from Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations and from European Commission, which is the ability to trace the food feed from producing animal or substance to be included in the food bank. As you can see, the different agencies have the quite different meaning, but with the same goal. What goal? To protect the product from the primary stages of up to the end of production, processing, and distribution, as well for our safety as consumers. And then next, after we define the word traceability, now let's move to the food supply chain. They said that traceability starts with the food supply chain. And how? Who are these responsible to perform and process the traceability? Who are these involved in processing? These organizations are, in the first partner is the farmer, or the grower or the producer, and then connected to the food manufacturer. And then next, followed with a food service distributor, which is connected to the restaurants. And then next, we have here the international shippers, which is they are connected to the international markets. And the last but not the least is the customers and consumers in the Philippines or in the global countries. And then next here is an example of how partners perform traceability through phase cycle of traceability. How does it work? How it is done, and how does it happening with the application of phase cycle? First is the plan and organize. Traceability partner perform for the second is the align master data. And then next, record traceability data. And then for fourth phase, the request trace. And then 5 is use information to detect and target the history of product. And then next, after we tackle the definition, as well how it works, how it is done, and how it happens. And we also mentioned the different organizations who are responsible for performing traceability. Let us now proceed. Why is it important and why do we need it? We need traceability for higher quality products to get this ISO certification and to have this quality, higher quality of our products and with lower costs. And then continuous improvement, continuous improvements, and for operational excellence, and to target to improve products, improve process, improve systems, improve service, and reduce costs, which is our target for the customer satisfaction, which is helpful for our stakeholders to have the increase in their profit. Next, We have here for easier product callbacks or returns. Happy customers, it's also happy customers services. And then next, we have here for better customer retention. And then we have here is the improved company reputation. And then we have here the streamlined inventory management. And for also cost savings and higher profits. And also for better compliance in law, legal rules, and to easily pass the audit. And then next, we have here is for easily detect the product counterfeiting. And then also for to abolish illegal labeling and manipulation. And for an end to black marketing, which is this black marketing nowadays is one of the issues. There's a lot of smuggle from other countries which is not been recorded. That's why there are some black marketing is one of the issue. And then also to stop unfair competition. It's one of the issue that we also, I give you an example nowadays. I've been in the market, which is, you know, the tomato and the onion. So the increase of price in the tomato is almost 200%. And in the tomato, white onion is almost 300%. Before it cost only 180, but now it's cost 500 pesos. Not only me na nakaka-experience ng ganon, so it's also the others. So next, we have here traceability is for put an end to gray market activities. What is this gray market activities? Gray market activities is unauthorized reseller on an efficient channel. So let's stop unauthorized sellers. Let's register our brand or company to IPO or the Intellectual Property Organization. Not only here in the Philippines, but in the global. So next. After we discuss the importance, let us now proceed with the difference mechanism. So we are not satisfied to know the importance, but we also need to tackle the mechanism to support the traceability. This is an example figure to explain the correlation between traceability system and traceability methods and how they together create traceability. The available methods is the means for a traceability system to connect the correct process data to a physical lot through the whole or part of the supply chain. The effectiveness system is required to provide an unambiguous, uninterrupted means of traceability for a physical lot, its subcomponents, and raw materials within the supply chains. And next mechanism is we have here the one step back and one step forward. But are this enough? Yes, let us consider this enough. However, we also have the 5 W's questions here, which is very helpful also to our industry. So these 5 W's questions are a powerful tool to avoid consuming more time to control the food hazards, such as products with microbial and chemical contamination, and prevent ineffective traceability. So let's discuss these 5 questions. Who? Let's focus on which parties are involved. What is the primary object being traced? Which related objects need to be traced? And then where these movements or events take place? And then when did a movement or event that included that object occur? And then why? What happened? What business process was happening at the time the event took place? What business transactions were taking place? Why was the object at that location at the time? So that's the 5 W's question. And this 5 W's question will be answered. We can use this to detect. Also, this question will be answered through this figure. And if there are times with microbial and chemical contamination, same situation with the Lac-Me ethylene oxide incident, the requirements and the data we need are inbound and outbound sales receipt and internal records to verify the source details of the contaminated products. Identification and collection of actual remaining specific lot is required to conduct additional testing. Certificate of analysis of raw material and finished product from the supplier is also needed to verify and confirm if the microbial and chemical present was exceed from the limit required to match with the latest sample result. And then if the trace request and investigation was confirmed, we will contact the regulators for assistance to be a witness for proper record keeping. And then another mechanism is internal traceability. What is this? To monitor the movement of product within limited specific area in a whole supply chain, such as single company or plant, is the record keeping of a product with a particular operation, company production, facility, and tracing products within the organization. And here is the process flow of specific areas needed to be inspected, from receiving, from storage, proceed to production, proceed to packaging and labeling, and next is the last part is the dispatching and delivery. If the product is of raw materials, QC manager or head of production will check if the raw material is okay or not. If okay, it is accepted to proceed to the next stages of production. If confirmed, it is rejected. If it's rejected, we will conduct verification to proceed if we need to do rework. If rework is applicable, we will declare it put on hold or for proper disposal. So note, do not forget to make a record of every reject, rework, and hold items either online or offline, or it depends on the available standard method used by the company. After we discuss the internal traceability, now we move to external traceability. They are always connected with. It is refers, if external traceability, it is refers to tracing of products between players in the supply chain. Refers to the traceability of the product outside of a business entity. It also serves to determine the location of items to be recalled and to coordinate recall actions. And here is the process flow of a specific areas needed to be inspected, from receiving and then move to for storage, and then to marketing and selling, and to ordering, and then next is the last is the dispatching and delivery, which is I also mentioned in the internal traceability. The general manager or the owner or the president, the QC, the manager, warehouse manager will check if the finished product received from the supplier is accepted or put on hold or denied in the area of responsibility. If okay, it is accepted to proceed to the next stages of distribution. If we declare it put on hold or denied in the area of responsibility, we need to secure the item in a place that is safe and secured so that nobody or person can access the contaminated item. Then, after that, labeled it with reject or hold. Put the reason why it is on hold. Why date and with date and time and complete details of sources. Then sign it or use an Excel to record the situation. Note, reminder, do not forget to make a record of every hold item either online or offline, or it depends on the available standard method used by the company. Then coordinate the situation to each person responsible for why the item is put on hold. So after we discuss the internal and external traceability, now let's move to technology application that very beneficial also. I would like to share with you the application of technology from the Philippines and global country sources. How our country adapts technology to compete with the other countries in terms of traceability in the new era of technology. First is application of barcode and QR code. It helps brands become transparent with consumers and aids them in making informed decisions before purchasing. Barcode and 2D QR code new dimension for 2027 from the US is in the next slides. I will show it to you later. So this technology is used to ensure product authenticity, prevent adulteration, and provide consumers with supply chain and origin information. Next, we have here the application of RFID. RFID, it helps to save organization time and money by providing real-time traceability. identification, communication, temperature, and location data for people and resources. Examples are the examples are on the next slide. So I will show it to you. The example is from RFID in agriculture and RFID in manufacturing and RFID in retail store. As well, we have the Philippine Published Mo series of 71 November 25, 2021. And then next, the application of WSN or the wireless sensor networks used in agriculture for monitoring to improve the quality and productivity of farming. And then as what I'm saying, I will show you now the sample of GS1 US barcode capability test kit from 2027, which is the dual marking transition period 2 Sunrise 2027, according to Jenan Morgan, VP of GS1. The way in which we interact with products has changed and technology has to keep up. Sunrise 2027 will allow industries to move toward a single standardized barcode that will create efficiencies for businesses and trading partners, as well as increase consumer engagement and satisfaction. And then these are the examples of RFID application, which is, as I told you a while ago, we have here from our sources is the RFID in agriculture. So it shows in the photo how it RFID applied. And then RFID in manufacturing, they are applied in the packaging. So this is not at 100% applied. So they are still using the barcode. And then next, we have here the example from our sources, how retailers can change customer experience at checkout by using RFID. And then the secret behind Amazon Go RFID. And then why retailers are finally embracing RFID to manage inventory and combat theft. Then next, this is the Philippine Mo series of 71 published November 25, 2021. It's a subject establishing a secure track and trace system for the importance of agricultural produce, where Philippines requires RFID tags for agricultural imports. However, according to other farmers, RFID systems unsuited for bulk farm. What are these? Like imports such as rice and corn, but for imported meat is applicable. If you want to know more details with this article, you may check the reference below. So let's now proceed with another technology application is the DNA barcoding. So used to identify the fraud in some processed seafood products, like what Davao did. They used the DNA barcoding to identify fish species. And then next, the application of molecular diagnostic methods from article from academia. So needs for standardization and validation of the detection of aquatic animal pathogens and disease. And then we have the application of blockchain technology. It is the beginning of a new era in technology, the blockchain traceability, which is what we have here. One of the example here is the statement from Dole. Plans to use blockchain food tracing in all divisions by 2025. The pineapple and produce purveyor, Dole wants to expand its use of blockchain to track goods from all 3 businesses and divisions in just 5 years. So this statement was published by Danny Nelson on April 24, 2020 and updated September 14, 2021. So if you want to know more about these details, you can check in below. We have here the references. So next, we have here also the example of out of this world tracking from Giant Seafood Thai Union remote sensing since 2021. This is one example. This is according to our sources. This data has strong potential to benefit both food safety and sustainability efforts in the seafood sector by supporting sustainable farming practices using insights into shrimp population, farm health contamination. And then Thai said that Union's main goal was to generate key data elements for these that are automated, independently, verifiable, and cost-effective. So according to Thai Union Group Director of Sustainability Adam Brennan, accessing reliable information for shrimp farms across wide geographic can be both challenging and expensive. Yes, because of the technology application. We see great potential in the use of satellite imaging to improve our transparency, as well as to assess risks and monitor the performance of our shrimp farm. This is only from Seafood Thai Union. So I'm waiting for our Philippines. So for more details, you may visit the reference below. Then next, we have here, after we discuss the application, so of course we have the challenges. What is this? The challenges of traceability, the challenges of the internal, external, and the technology application. In management, first we have here, in line with this issue, is the lack of guidance due to some practitioners hired by the company is not that knowledgeable with the current standard and standardized procedure. Traceability maintenance, lack of traceability maintenance. Some of the technology we mentioned a while ago are needed to be maintained, updated. Training and personnel are also required to cope with the new methods and systems to avoid delays and to meet the set goal of the company. This return of investment among the hesitant, why some other companies find it hard to cope with the trends of technology. They are hesitant to buy and adopt this mentioned technology because they are not sure if the one they invest in the materials and tools will return back double the price of equipment they purchase. Unmanageable large data sets increased project costs. So cost of purchase software and hiring of competent and qualified employees to perform the traceability. And next, we have here the social issues. Different stakeholders' viewpoints, and internal and external politics, and lack of communication understanding. In different stakeholder viewpoints, there are some stakeholders much like the easy way, but others want to adopt the challenge of traceability, so they much like the complex situation to cope with the change of new era of technology instead. There are some who only support the authorized reseller and official channel. There are some who want to follow what is mandatory, law, rules, and legal way instead, but some abolish the gray market activity as well. But as stakeholders' viewpoints are concerned, there are still few who support the unauthorized reseller on an official channel. I believe there are few who still don't know the effect because of their different viewpoints, if they are more legal or illegal. That is easy way. However, it is the wrong way that might affect the reputation of the company. In internal and external politics may affect the efficacy and effectiveness of traceability. Attitudes, beliefs, and response of a leader and worker might affect the performance of traceability due to lack of understanding and communication. The belief that one can understand politics and therefore participate in politics. In external efficacy, that the government will respond to one's demands. Lastly, the technical issue. So we have here tools not being maintained due to lack of competent and trainable people to handle the maintenance duty. And then record keeping problems are because large data sets increase project cost. Established data, documentation software, and versioning tools are required for financial support. So it's also the main issue of the food supply chain, the financial support. Not only the food supply chain, but mostly our governments. So, automatic tools require validation, which is time-consuming and costly. As mentioned, we have this issue, but we also have the potential solves this problem. Don't worry, we have this potential solution. So let's move on here. The potential solutions to consider helpful to the startup food supply chain or for multi-companies who are still hesitant to adopt an effective and advanced traceability system because of the required financial support maintenance. In management issue, we can solve it. Make person or department responsible. Establish industry or domain-specific guidance. Enrolled in a training course or attend related seminars in regards with food safety concerns and traceability adaptation to gain more knowledge and to have management education. Educate ourselves through attending training seminars, with free registration or with lower fees, same as what is happening at this moment. So trace for a purpose and apply the 5 phase cycle of traceability and 5 W's questions to avoid consuming time and performing manual or digital traceability. In social issues, establish or implemented strict organizational policy as guidance to people in the workplace. Once it is established, strict organization policy is effective, those workers met the main goal of the company. Give them incentive schemes, feedback for productivity improvement. Have regular group meetings, review and training. And also, we need to have clear visibility of responsibility. And in technical issues, we can solve it to establish tool design and methods applicable to your organization. And then think effective way to build tool from scratch. The do-it-yourself application. So, and also as general purpose tools, develop custom tools, semi-automated approach, remind other workers to use various tools techniques, and apply better tool design for precise trace returns. Then, after sharing all information pertaining to traceability as a powerful tool, you may think this is still not enough information. But you may consider also the next slides as additional guidelines. If you are still not decided yet and still hesitant to adopt the traceability in your establishment, these recommended features publications are also helpful for future references. The first recommended featured publication in DOSC Region 4A 2015. This is a wide-ranging project that will be significant to the efforts of the Philippine government to alleviate poverty and provide employment and livelihood opportunities for the country's poor. And then also it aims to organize a structure or the complete documentation of all the stages of production, processing, and distribution that food commodities go through to reach the end consumers from farm to fork. And in DTI 2016, DTI and SGS joined together to install Philippine Traceability System for Region 2 SMES, a gap audit and the development of traceability system and conducting P-Trace awareness session to chosen beneficiaries. And in BFAR 2019, we have here the Administrative Circular number 251-1 series of 2019 with titled Amended Traceability System for Fish and Fishery Products in SOL. And in SOL Philippines 2021, SALT means Seafood Alliance for Legality and Traceability. So introducing Philippines journey to electronic traceability, an electronic seafood traceability, a method to exchange information across the supply chain used to track and verify legality of tuna. So next featured publication is NBOC 2019, 2020, and 2022. This is a system that shall enable the Bureau real-time monitoring of inland movements of containerized goods using an information and communication technology-enabled system such as GPS tracking device to secure its transport to the intended destination and is being utilized at Custom Operation Center. And it's used to strengthen border protection. And then it is also to implement electronic customs, seal with tag release and tag arrive. So, guys, wait. Inom lang po ako ng tubig. Medyo na po yung ko. Wait lang. Wait lang, Ma'am LB. Nainom mo. Wait lang. We have the recommended feature is, and then after we have it in the recommended and all of these, Then now let's move on. After we discuss the recommended feature of application of traceability, here we, next slides please, LD. Okay, here we have the from US FDA 2011, 2017, 2020. And then next we have, and then generally, traceability is consumers' desire. And regulators dictate it, retailers demand it. But the reality of the industry is suppliers detest it. And then here are the conclusion of our presentation. And that's all. And that's end my presentation. And thank you for listening, guys. Hope it will help. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kim, for that very useful and enlightening talk on food traceability as a system for monitoring for food industries. So as per my takeaways, we need traceability in order to produce high-quality products for continuous improvement of the manufacturing process. It will also improve the company's reputation as traceability will prove the real contents or validate the benefits of their product they are gearing towards to. How about you, Sir Benedict? What are your takeaways?
Well, my takeaway is simply traceability is essential. Whether you're a big business or you're a small business, traceability must be in your process. Why? Because if you have traceability, it increases your supply chain visibility. Second, it improves your quality control system, and it reduces your risk. Risk that your food sold to market is have this contamination, or somebody will try to sabotage your food. Now, we have been notified, no, that there will be another set of question and answers. So, Sir Gian, we will be asking the group a while ago based on the questions that were sent to us, right? Speakers from the first session, can you please open your cameras? All right, Ms. G, thank you very much. All right. So this is a question coming from Ms. R.C. Mendoza. Which agency is responsible for issuing license to operate to micro food business operators? And how do they ensure that people who are selling food in the streets are knowledgeable and complaints or knowledgeable about the complaints with the Food Safety Act? Anyone from our speakers, can you please answer this question?
Hello. Hello, Benedict.
Again, this question is from RC Mendoza. Which agency is responsible for issuing license to operate to micro food business operators? How do they ensure that people who are selling the food in the streets are knowledgeable and there is a complaint with Food Safety Act? So basically, how will they complain with regards to Food Safety Act?
I think Noor, can you answer the first part of the question?
Yes, Ma'am G. That depends upon on what micro industry in this sector. Kasi if you are talking about the LTO, issuance of license to operate, whether you are in a processed foods, manufacturer, distributor, and importer. But on the other hand of that, kasi may mga, pag sinabi natin yung mga street food stalls natin, that is fall under the local government unit. Kaya each agency has its own mandates doon sa mga training, sa mga food safety. Kagaya sa amin sa DA, we have our own training program para sa mga farmers natin, as well as yung same others agency also sa DOH. Kaya nga nabanggit natin ni Ma'am G kanina regarding on the availability of the training. So yun, well effective kasi depende po yun sa sa micros, kung anong klaseng micro business siya in. It's either kung siya ay a catering sa micro scale, it fall off under the regulatory jurisdiction of the LGU. But if he is a micro scale in the processed foods, or if he's in a manufacturer, that is fall under the FDA. So yun ang mga trade requirements. I hope this answered the question, Sir Benedict.
Thank you, Noor. For the second part of the question, how do we know if how do consumers know if the mobile food vendor is compliant? Unfortunately, we still do not have mechanisms in place for consumers to know which mobile food vendor is compliant to the act. Unlike yung mga big companies where we can see they have their FSSC 22000 or ISO 22000 na logos, we do not still have yet for mobile food vendor. But ako, what I do is I just observe the practice of the food vendor for a little bit before I buy. So we just probably use our best judgment pending yung full implementation ng Food Safety Act.
Right, thank you, Ma'am G and Sir Noor. I would like to pass on to Mr. Gian, the next question.
Okay, thank you, Sir Benedict. So I have received a question coming from our Facebook Live viewer, Ms. Tamayo P. Mary. So good morning. What can you say about how effective is the enforcement of Philippines Food Safety Act 2013 to street food stalls since LGUs are unable to monitor their food sanitation practices? Anyone from our speakers?
Allow me to answer that, Sir Gian. As I said earlier, our implementing agencies have still yet to issue their industry guidance. Well, in my opinion, that is not yet a full implementation of the law. We will probably notice the effectiveness of the law when it is fully implemented. So until then, let's just be vigilant by ourselves and let us keep ourselves informed of what are food safe handling para makatulungan po natin ang sarili natin and our friends as well when we buy food from vendors. Sir Gian, I hope that answers the question.
Okay, thank you, Ma'am Geraldine. Very well said po. At ating na-address na po ang ating mga questions ng ating mga live viewers. Thank you po for your effort on answering our questions po.
And that ends the first half of day one of our webinar. By the way, before we end, the questions that were raised a while ago will be answered via email. So please check your emails on the questions for the answers from our speakers. And now, as we end our this morning's first day of our webinar, I have hope each and every one of us have learned a lot from this webinar. And always remember that happy consumers mean a blossoming market, and a blossoming market leads to economic recovery. You now can take your lunch and please be back at 1 p.m. for the second session of our webinars, or 1:30 for our second session of our webinar. And please kindly scan the QR code to redirect you to the evaluation link for this session. Reminder that participants are given only 1.5 hours to submit the evaluation form, after which the link will be closed. And that's wrap up our first day, or the half day of our first day. See you later, guys. Thank you.